Welcome back. This is part 2 of our ongoing conversation with Sandee Kastrul. Stay tuned. I always wanted to touch on I.c.stars a bit because it's such an interesting program, and I think what people don't really entirely realize is how incredibly hard it is to survive in that program. When I hear about what the folks in that program have to do to succeed, I'm like, man, I am not sure I could pass this program.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I mean, you have a very high standard, and you really put people's feet to the fire and produce some great results. If you want to talk about the program a bit,
I would first start by saying the reason why it's so hard is that our fundamental belief is that the more adversity you faced in your life, the more resilient you are.
Mm-hmm.
And in developing this resiliency toolkit with critical thinking skills and creativity and systems thinking and reciprocity and innovation, we're really just providing people an opportunity to unpack that and to provide a different context.
Mm-hmm.
And that context happens to be IT and business. But we firmly believe that that resiliency is what makes people great programmers, great entrepreneurs, and great community leaders.
Mm.
And that's what we're looking for. So our assessment process is 12 hours long. We'll see 400 people at the top of the funnel to pick the 20 who will go through our boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
And we're super strict. Like, you can't be late or absent or you're fired. Some of my best friends are educators as well. And they're like, Sandee, are you crazy? What if you miss the bus? What if the train falls off the tracks? What if somebody, God forbid, dies? All of this. And I'm saying, well, then we have to be there for our life. But we're also, by saying this, we're giving people a strategy to how to show up.
Uh-huh.
And moreover, it sheds a light on the things in our life that are preventing us from being present.
Mm.
Whether that's addiction, whether that's bad relationships, whether, we're just plain staying up too late and playing too many video games, right? We're learning how to say what's important to me and who, by the way, is behind me in that.
Mm.
So, that's a baseline. It's hard. And, kind of like the old 80s show, Fame, when she was like, you want fame? Well, fame costs. And right here's where you start paying. It's sweat, So that's the baseline. But then the kind of beautiful part, I think, of what the team does in our curriculum is that it's all about pushing your limits every single day. And it's designed to make you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then learn how to deal with ambiguity. So, the very first sprint, they're given an RFP from their client. 20 people are divided up into 4 teams. They form their own consulting companies, and then they're competing with each other to win this bid, which is awesome, right? Like we start with competition, and then eventually it moves to collaboration. And that we script things all along the way. Like, so their second client meeting, the teams are coming to present some ideas. And what we do is we script this conflict that breaks out on the client side. So, you've got the business and the technology folks get into a fight, right? And they're yelling at each other, and the teams have to decide, oh my gosh, what do we do? Do we mediate? Do we moderate? Or just shut up and let the loudest person win,
Right.
And so then back at the whiteboard with their program manager, they deconstruct that and say, did you build trust and credibility with your client today? Did you defend your client? How do we move from being students to being consultants? How do we fight for our client? And so it's just all these really powerful things, but you never get to do what you're good at. You have to help somebody else do that.
Right.
And learn new things, and I think we know this as entrepreneurs, right? Like, that's part of the pain is we never get to do what we're good at. We got to coach somebody else and constantly learn new things and find the joy in that. So over and over in the 4-month training, we're finding the joy in those moments. And so, it's intense, it's hard, it's like, our counselor would say, like, I talk to 6-foot tall guys who are just crying and being like, I can't get my going to work, But out of that, some of our metrics are, we have a 90% placement rate.
Wow.
The average earning increase is 300 to 400%.
Wow.
In 6 months, right? You're making more than both of your parents combined. And that, it's like 95% of all of our alums are volunteering and engaged in their communities, and which is
amazing.
awesome, right?
Yeah.
And then, so we didn't end there with, what are the outcomes, but we asked ourselves, how do we measure impact? And so one of our measures is home ownership. And so not only are we looking at how many people go from receiving assistance to now becoming homeowners, but where are they buying those homes? So what if we determine success not by getting out of the hood, but by investing back in? And so I'm really proud to say that we have over 70 homeowners in our alumni association, just in Chicago.
Awesome.
And the majority of them are buying homes in the communities that they come from and saying, like, look, I am here, like, geek is chic, like there's something to aspire to. And, oh, by the way, I'm going to volunteer. I'm going to teach a class. I'm going to set up a lab. I'm going to do things for the community instead of robbing the community of, all the resources that I give. And then the other metric, which I think is super cool, is 58 businesses have been started in our alumni group.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I got to say, like, I've met so many of the various cohorts over the years, and, some really, really impressive folks that come out of that program. And I link to them on LinkedIn, and I kind of see their careers progressing. And, it's like, that's really awesome to see. I mean, like, the work you do is so important, and it's so good for the city. And now you're expanding. Maybe if you could talk about all the markets you're expanding into, I think that's a really cool thing too.
Yeah, it's super cool and really fun for me, right? Because as an entrepreneur, like, there's nothing as exciting as the beginning.
Yeah, right.
And so today we're in Chicago, of course, and Milwaukee. And Columbus was actually our first city that we expanded into that market. And they're doing some strategic planning right now. So then, so you're starting to see this, like, smaller city, Rust Belt kind of thing, which is great. And I think it's really our sweet spot because so many of the kids graduating from college with computer science degrees or business or whatever, they're coming to cities like Chicago. And so there's a real talent drain in these cities. And so we're providing a real need. So Kansas City is our next city that we're working with. And Buffalo, New York is in the queue. And so really we're just enjoying kind of growing slowly, really putting roots down, but listening to the communities that we're going into, and spending a good amount of time doing listening campaigns and a feasibility study to really understand the supply side and the demand side. What are the skills and what's the flavor culture of each of these places? Because it's different,
Well, and I think that's awesome, because I think the only criticism I would give I.c.stars is that there's not enough of you.
No.
It's like the fact that you're expanding into new markets is exciting to me, because I think this model is a great model, and if you can do more of it and bring more people into the greater overall economy and community, I think, gosh, wow, that's really important stuff. So really, and I got to say, I really appreciate what you've done for Chicago. What for people who aren't from Chicago, Sandee has probably the biggest Rolodex of technology people there ever was. So, I mean, I think like when you have an event, everybody shows up.
Yeah.
Which I think is really awesome. And you deserve. You've been doing it for 20 years. You put the hard work in, right? So it's you've done what it takes to get there. So that's
every time we
commendable.
Every time we bring up I.c.stars and we talk about you and I.c.stars, it's funny. Everyone's like, "Oh, I know I.c.stars. I know them. Oh, I know Sandee. I know Sandee." It's like a badge of honor. Yeah, I know her. Yeah, I go to their events. I've been there. Yeah.
Well, I think the rule of every good CEO is never eat lunch alone. Like if you're not eating lunch with a client or a potential client, something's not right.
Right.
Yeah.
But I do think I love the technology community. I think technology folks are awesome because they're systems thinkers.
Right.
But we also really love to plug in.
Yeah.
To connect to something. You see it in the first 5 years of any programmer's life is their biggest gripe is I want to know the bigger picture. I want to be able to plug into the reason why we're building this system, this app, this website, whatever it is. I want to understand the flow. And that need to sort of plug in and to find community bigger than just what we do, but a community that honors you for who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that's what we really try to build when we say we're a hub for the technology to community to plug in, is a place that celebrates all of us for who we are, not just what we do.
Yeah.
So Sandee, I have a question for you. So I know you don't like to talk about yourself very often. I've noticed that about you, which is awesome. But where does all your passion come from? Like where's that fire? How did that all start?
Well, I am a glorified school teacher. And think about it like this, that red one-room schoolhouse where the teacher stood outside and rang the bell and said, "You come on," that was me. But in an urban setting, right? So maybe I didn't have a bell. Maybe I wasn't necessarily standing outside, but I was saying "You in the bushes smoking, you get in here, And I've always been passionate about education because I think it really is the ultimate enabler and the ultimate equalizer, because our education determines not only what opportunities lie ahead of us, but who we know, right?
Mm-hmm.
The two things that make the difference between great education and mediocre or bad education is what we learn and who we learn with. And by what we learn, it's, whether we are learning to work on an assembly line or we're learning to run the business. And it's just a very simple difference.
Yeah.
In one school, we are learning to answer the questions at the back of the chapter. In the other school, we're learning how to write the questions.
Mm.
And basically, that's what technology people do. You write the rules, you write the code, And that once that happens, we are free, right? When we shift from being consumers to being innovators, we're free. And then who we learn with is all about our social capital, right? So if we go to school with kids whose parents are senators and CEOs, we have that network to plug into.
Yeah.
But if everybody's parents who we go to school with, we are in the same role, then that's what we can aspire to. And so those two things I think are it. And so I've always been passionate about education and access to education and great education because I was a kid. I grew up in Chicago. I'm a Chicago public school kid, and I also got to go to really great art schools, and meet kids who had a lot of affluence and sort of, I call it the ability to walk between worlds.
Yeah.
And that I believe that the more worlds you can walk between, the more competency you have in meeting and engaging with people who are different. And that is a capital in itself. So our social capital is not just how big the group of people are who are like us. It's how many groups of people who are different than us can we access, connect to, and engage.
Wow, those are pretty powerful statements. We've always talked about doing a roundup of our podcast with great quotations. I think we're going to have a few out of this one.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys!
Oh, come on. No, but I man, what you talk about in terms of like your social network and how to expand beyond your sort of limited social network into a broader and more connected social network. That is so powerful. And I think, that's a piece of privilege that people don't always see. People who live in, more affluent areas and go to, more affluent schools and things like that, their friends go on to be successful because, sort of predetermined, by their wealth. And, people don't understand how much that changes their lives.
Yeah.
And how limiting it is for other people who don't have access to those things.
Totally.
Yeah.
So Sandee, so what comes next? I mean, both for you and for the world. What do you see is on the horizon here?
Well, kind of going back to the start of our conversation, like I think we really are right on the line of change. And so how we engage in that change, how we foster that change, how we embrace it is up to us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I personally am embracing it and stepping into the future with armed with systems thinking, with a killer network,
Yeah.
and a lot of passion.
Yeah.
Like I am more fueled, I think, than I've ever been.
That's
And
awesome.
don't get me wrong, like I'm exhausted. This is exhausting and crazy. But I mean, it's the possibility of what's on the other side of this very sticky time.
Yeah.
So I think, for I.c.stars, we'll grow into new cities, but we're also going to grow our depth. So like in Chicago, how do we create a program that gets people ready to do I.c.stars?
Mm-hmm.
How do we expand the pipeline? And how do we serve more folks, to your point, Chris? Like,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's what's next. And I brought with a little a summary of, we had an all hands on meeting with our interns, and I was hoping I could share it with you, just to kind
I would
of
love it.
Yeah.
what they see or what they feel. And this was right after George Floyd's death. And we just kind of took a pulse of, how are you feeling? Where are you with this? And here's what we got. We want to know what's next. If we were to move, where would we go? We're frustrated and can still give support. We need a leader and we need to stand together. We are the leaders we're looking for. Everybody's a criminal now. It's getting out of hand. We are ready. We need unity. I will lend my voice. I will voice my life. We were looted. How did we get here? We're the product of what has happened. Are we not doing all the things that we've been asked to do? We're feeling as if we can never do enough.
Mm.
We are products of a system versus the system itself. We're losing friends who tell us to stay quiet. We saw looting and then people giving those things away. We saw the system giving our lives away. The government is not outside of us, it's inside of us. This is the shock. And now we need some awe. We're all human beings. This is our moment in history. This is global. And a lack of hope is a strategy. We are growing. There is a crisis of COVID. There's also a crisis of people being slaughtered. We are sad but insightful. We are Black and we are struggling. The murderers struggle for feeling less than, and we lack hope. You are we. You are we. you are we, and the hope needs you.
Wow. It's pretty heavy.
Love it.
I know, right?
It's great.
It's just a how are you feeling? Just a, all of those things coming out. And there's so many things that say to me, wow, like you really are the future leaders.
Mm-hmm.
That it's both sides of this. And so that really just, gave me goosebumps and knocked my socks off. I thought I'd share it with you guys.
Yeah, me too.
That's awesome. I really appreciate it. And, Sandee, I got to say, thank you so much. I'm so glad we could get you on here. We had you slated to participate in our Emerge conference in April that unfortunately was, put down by COVID-19, a casualty of COVID-19, like so many other things. And so I'm just glad we got an opportunity to get your story out and help promote I.c.stars a bit. And I'm just so thankful you could join us today.
Well, thank you. This was a blast. You guys are awesome. And we will emerge. We will emerge.
We will. Congratulations on 20 years of mattering.
Thank you.
It's been an incredible ride, and I remember you, from back in the early days, and some of the great things you were doing then. So thank you for what you've done for the city. Thank you for what you do for everyone, and appreciate you being on.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
If you like what you saw, hit that like button. Click on that subscribe button. That helps me a ton. And if you want to get notified when we post more content, click on that bell icon. And I will see you in the next video.